No damage, but lots of concern after a series of earthquakes rocked North Idaho. 4 earthquakes in less than 17 hours in North Idaho. The latest hitting around noon today, about 6 miles north of Ponderay, a 3-magnitude quake, and it follows a series of tremors that hit the Panhandle last night and overnight. The epicenter of the first was on the east side of Lake Ponderay, the second in the middle of the lake near Hope, and the third at Sunrise Bay on the lake. Those quakes reportedly felt as far away as Chewelah, Washington, Libby, Montana, even Spokane, South Hill. KXLY4's Caiti Currey working for you tonight. Caiti, we're just getting word of this 4th quake now in just the last half hour. Emergency officials say we really need to treat these like a practice drill.
Most definitely, Nadine, and these quakes weren't large enough to cause any damage, but like you said, Bonner County emergency officials say, we all need to educate ourselves in case this happens again.
Most of the calls were just, you've heard large explosions and the ground is shaking.
Calls poured into Bonner County Emergency Management after the 4.1 magnitude earthquake was felt for miles.
I wasn't sure what it was. It's like, it's too long to be a thunderstorm.
Once people realized the little impact the quakes had on the area, they quickly took to social media, even joking about the minor damage.
Usually the only tremors felt in North Idaho are right here at Silverwood Theme Park on the ride Tremors. Okay, bad joke, but in all seriousness, officials are thankful that there were no serious injuries or much damage.
Try no reported damage at all from anywhere in Bonner County. For Silverwood, it was back to business today, preparing for opening weekend.
We haven't found any damage to any of our buildings, rides, facility at all. It's not typical in our region. I think that's why it's a little bit surprising to people.
Bob Howard, director of Bonner County's emergency management team, echoed that, saying it was more of a shock than a scare.
Like, it's a big event for Bonner County because we don't have earthquakes typically. So, and to have 3 in one night is, that's big news for us.
He says although there are no tall buildings or freeway tunnels to worry about, if another earthquake happens, it could be serious.
Our biggest concern are landslides, rock slides, things of that nature, because typically this time of year during the spring when we have spring runoff and snow melt, we experience those types of events anyway, and adding
We have attached a link on our website at KXLY.com for ways you and your family can educate yourself on earthquake safety. Reporting live in North Idaho tonight, Caiti Currey, KXLY4 News.
All right, thank you, Caiti. Those quakes happened near the Hope Fault, which parallels the Clark Fork River and Highway 200. Now, those tremors registered on Eastern Washington University's seismograph. The Hope Fault has been active for millions of years. Historically, it behaves like a strike-slip fault, with the towns of Clark Fork and Bonners Ferry sliding to the southeast, while Lake Ponderay and Sandpoint slowly moving to the northwest. Dr. John Buchanan, a geology professor at the EWU, says the Hope Fault is relatively dormant, and he doesn't foresee much more seismic activity.
I think we might see another aftershock or two, and then this will die down and people will have interesting stories to tell. I don't see things ramping up or this a big threat to local populations in northern Idaho.
And Dr. Buchanan says last night's quakes were the releases of stresses built up in the Earth's surface when the Rocky Mountains were forming 60 million years ago. Spokane has its own earthquake problems to deal with. A newly discovered fault that runs right up Division Street and responsible for a swarm of earthquakes here back in 2001. That's where KXLY4 Chef Humphrey joins us now live with a look at what geologists know about this slowly shifting piece of Earth's surface and why West Spokane is rising above the rest of the city, Jeff?
Nadine, those earthquakes back in 2001, that was part of a thrust fault that actually gets its start right here at North Foothills Drive and heads its way up Division. That fault in those earthquakes actually lifted northwest Spokane up over the top of northeast Spokane by about 15 millimeters. That's about the height of your thumbnail. It's also a signal that we've got 2 very big pieces of real estate up north that are getting squeezed together, and together they could trigger more earthquakes in our future. Geologists have been trying to take Spokane's seismic pulse since that swarm of earthquakes back in 2001.
The largest earthquake was a magnitude 4 on November 11th. And a few days later, in late November, the whole thing stopped.
The yellow circles on this map show the epicenters of those earthquakes, but they happened in the Corbin Park area where there are no known faults. Now, after using echolocation on the ground and searching for magnetic anomalies from the air, scientists have figured out where that fault lies.
We think we have found evidence for a part of the Spokane Fault that caused the earthquakes in 2001 and the ground deformation of 2001.
Take a look at this slide and you'll see where that ground deformation took place, right in the center of the city. The west side of Spokane rose up over the east side of Spokane a ½ inch during those earthquakes back in 2001.
We're really concerned about what might happen in the future. Was this a typical earthquake, or is this telling us that there might be a possibility of a larger earthquake?
The good news is that Spokane's fault is relatively short, about 20 kilometers long, and nothing like the bigger ones capable of leveling cities. Geologists say if more research shows that Spokane's fault is capable of a magnitude 6 earthquake, then it's time for action.
My recommendation would have a campaign for people to strap down their water heaters, bolt their houses to the foundation, have a plan, evacuation plan, that sort of thing.
Dating this new fault that parallels Division, it was difficult to locate because it's buried under several hundred feet of loose gravel and sand material that was laid down long ago by those great Missoula floods that swept across the valley. Those materials, they do a great job of containing our aquifer, but that slushy strata could make for the shaking to be even worse in the event of a major quake here. Reporting live on North Division, Jeff Humphrey, KXLY4.